Okay, well, welcome back to the summit. I want to welcome Brian Burns here to the summit.
Hey Mario, how you doing? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's exciting. I'm happy you're here. So you're one of the few people here in the summit where you and I actually have a relationship prior to
Yeah,
the summit when we used to work together many years ago in high-tech sales.
yeah, it's only a short 20 years ago, wasn't it?
No need to bring that up, okay?
I think you were in kindergarten, weren't you? You were.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, we had Brian on the podcast, the honest real estate agent, and I have a lot of respect for what he does. He is, by trade, he was an outside sales guy, Fortune 500, Fortune 100 accounts, and now today he has his own podcast. You want to talk about your podcast?
Yeah, I've been doing it pretty much for the last 6 years. It's called The Brutal Truth About Sales and Selling. And the focus is really kind of boiling down what sales is all about and not just being kind of the fluff-oriented, smile and dial, just work harder approach. It's like what I really see working today, not just for me, but for my clients, and kind of debunking a lot of the myths that I see out there, a lot of the kind of BS or the old school door-to-door sales approaches. I think we're in a new world now, as we can see. We're doing something online. We're thousands of miles apart, but we're catching up and we're talking about what really works today.
Yeah, that's so true. That's so true. So, well, I'm happy you're here. So you're kind of our sales guru, our sales, trainer because of what you're doing today. And so you've got, the open floor here to kind of talk about how to help realtors.
Yeah, I think, we were talking about it a little bit before. And what I do with most of my clients is instead of thinking about what do you say when you meet the person, what if you took it from the opposite approach where you said, what is the outcome that you want to have and what your client wants to have? And in sales, what you really want is a recommendation, not just a referral, but somebody saying, oh, you're looking for a house or you want to move or you're thinking of selling, call Mario. Why? Because this is what he did. This is something unique and powerful that he brings to the table. He understands really how to do it. And if you, instead of looking at, okay, you meet them, say hello, find out their needs, that process we're comfortable with, but I think it's more powerful to go the other way, to go back from the recommendation and all those little steps, because it forces us as salespeople to think through that process and all the little details, because you start to see the whole stream, the whole thread of the sale, and then you can start to break it down into manageable pieces instead of looking for the silver bullet. So I always say begin with the end in mind. It's kind of one of the 7 habits of highly effective people. But in sales, I think it's super powerful because you get to see the real problems that you're solving for people and the real challenges that they have and all the things that can go wrong. Because let's face it, why do we lose sales? Especially in real estate, you're really not showing somebody a house who doesn't want to buy a house unless you're just lonely, right? If it's not like retail where people just walk in and say, hey, you got some houses? Or, yeah, I'm waiting for my wife who's down getting candy. You really have somebody who has enough interest. They might be kicking tires a little bit, trying to get the best high dollar for their house or just checking out an open house as a neighbor. But once somebody decides that, yeah, they want to move, you've got somebody who's interested. How do you guide them through that process? And if you think backwards, you'll start to really understand what has to happen instead of constantly getting tripped up about what goes wrong during that transaction, what goes wrong through that process. Oh, they can't afford it. They've got bad credit. The house can't be inspected. There's, an underlying title issue. Or, they're not going to be able to be competitive on the bid. What are all those things and how do you prevent those? Because I'm sure you've been doing real estate now, 15 years. The way that you view a transaction, you qualify hard. because you probably spent too many Sundays driving people around to houses they can't afford. And you're like rolling your eyes and you're like, okay, that's what Zillow's for, right? If you want to fantasize. And, I remember watching a show where the guy had a budget anywhere between 100K and 8 million. Sums up 90% of the houses in that market. So you'd spend a lot of time and you very quickly can qualify people and see all the little things that can go wrong and how do you prevent them. I mean, your business is competitive in a different way but once you have the listing, you kind of own it for a time period. A lot of salespeople don't have that. They're competing about different products. But if you're driving people around, you can very quickly understand what can they afford, what do they like, what's the location, square footage, style, and then you can kind of say, like, who really makes that decision? And you can kind of get that personality because typically you've got at least two people involved. You got a husband and wife or partners, whatever, and then there's sometimes other people involved who are financing it, grandparents, the kids, how many kids, future kids, all of these things that a senior person only learns by it going wrong. So when you ask for 3 tips, I would make number 1, begin with the end in mind, because it really focuses you on your process. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it does, because when I look at it conceptually, a lot of times we look at just trying to get that initial lead.
Yeah.
Try to make that initial contact. And a lot of the focus of sales training revolves around that. So what you're saying is kind of flip it, make sure that you're looking at what the end result is, and make sure the person that you're talking to is the right person to get to that end result.
Yeah, because if you think of, the number one thing I hear from salespeople is, I want more at-bats. And it's like, no, you don't. You want more commission. Okay? That's what you really want. And if you just get at-bats, you can get tons of at-bats. And you can strike out, or you're playing the wrong game on the wrong field on the wrong day. But we think what we really want is somebody to come to us who wants to buy a house and has tons of money and isn't fussy. Right? But that doesn't exist, right? Or you want somebody to list their house a little bit below market so that you can sell it real quick. But what do all your clients want? They want 10% above what the house is worth, right? I watch these real estate shows. It's like the exact same pattern each time. The builder or the seller always wants more than the house is worth. And the listing agent always takes it because they get 90 days to lock it in. And at the end of the 90 days, there's some relationship and the seller kind of crumbles and says, oh, I can only get the market value of the house. And they're shocked. So the at-bats approach is a waste of time because you only get commissioned on the sales that you close. You don't get commissioned on the people you drive around on every Sunday. That's Uber. If you want to get commissioned on that, work for Uber. They get commissioned on every deal. Right? Real estate is a commission-only business. And the reason is it's because it's a ton of work and it's high risk. And that's why there's high turnover. Is that people are focused on being active because active feels good. We feel comfortable that if we're busy, something good's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, that's so true. I mean, because
Yeah.
you and I, we worked together and we saw that with, some of the reps,
Yeah.
they show us the call sheet, how many calls they need. And it's like, well, how many appointments did you set?
Yeah.
Right? Because that's the end result that they need. And it's the same thing with us as real estate agents is, how many closings do we get at the end of the year and how many people did it take to get to that point? Because we have a finite resource of time.
You have time, and it's a very tight window of time because you're dealing with people who work. And between 9 to 5, it's hard to get their time. So it's off time, weekends, that, especially when you have a family, is very precious time to you as well. And it's completely on your dime because if you're driving them around, you can't be doing something else. So it's high risk for you. So if you think from the end backwards, you start to really say, can they afford this house? Are they serious? Is the seller really going to take, market value for the house? Does the seller really want to close and sell the house, or do they just want an affirmation of what it's worth? Because they don't pay you unless you sell the house. So it's all free to them as well. If you stage it, on these high-end shows, you see them spending tons of money staging the house. That's their money. It's not the owner's money. So you've got to be really hard at qualifying. And when we worked together, I was really hard qualifying because it was me who had to get up at 5 a.m. to get on an airplane. And I learned very quickly that somebody would set up a lot of meetings for me that just were not qualified. And I hated traveling, and, to get up, at 5 a.m, get in the shower, head to the airport and sit on a plane. And then you find out the people just aren't interested, or they're too early, or they just want an education. You got to think backwards. And I think it's the most powerful thing that I've learned as a salesperson, and you really get to understand the sales process.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. And I think one of the reasons that agents and salespeople, they fall into the trap of, you and I talked about, they're begging for business.
Yeah.
And they're just doing whatever they can. They don't have the self-confidence to kind of push back and say, well, just kind of explain to me, why you want to buy a house.
They're delaying the pain, right? They're hoping, they're happy ears. Remember, we used to talk about that. They hear what they want to hear instead of hearing what's being said. And the sooner you hear bad news, the better. And I have this law: what isn't overtly positive is covertly negative. If they aren't overtly taking actions, committing their time, their energy, their money, there's something wrong there, and you're just delaying that pain. You're pulling the Band-Aid off really slowly. And when you're in commission only, it's very scary. When you work for a company, you got a little leeway, like most of my clients, but in real estate, you don't have that. You have to be ruthless with your time, not ruthless with people, but ruthlessly with your time and your investment, because it is your investment. So my number 2 thing was, think of the whole game. Because too often in sales, we say it's all about relationships, it's all about activity, it's all about location. Well, it's all about everything, isn't it? It's about the whole game. There's no one thing about the game that matters. You might have seasons like you do in real estate. If you have a buyer's market or a seller's market, or you have windows of the season that are good where activity does pay off. Spring, and I think in real estate it's really hot. So there you need to really be active with people. And in the winter, it might be the great time to build up the relationships, to do networking with the ecosystem, building inspectors, mortgage brokers, find out the whole path, make sure that your ecosystem's working for you, because it's more of the downtime. Make sure that all the sellers in the neighborhood knows you. Do what you're doing, get visible online, so that when someone searches realtor in that location, you're number 1 that comes up. All of those things. If you really think about the whole game, then you start to really understand how it's done. And I think too many people in sales look at the short term. They read a book that, it's all about challenging or pushing people back. Well, that's good. That's a skill. Questioning's a skill. Storytelling's a skill. Qualifying's a skill. Closing's a skill. Having an open house is a skill. All of those things are great skills, but none of them autonomously is enough to really do it. And if you admit that to yourself and really say, I'm a professional and I'm going to learn the whole game. I'm not just going to learn how to putt because I have to get the ball close enough to putt for putting to be valuable. And driving's good, but you gotta still get the ball in the hole, So that thinking about the whole game, I think is something that I do and I teach differently than most people in this space. Most people focus on, just work insanely hard. And I think people underestimate how much knowledge and skill you need, and that hard work does not replace that, because we're all limited to 24 hours a day, and there may be a one-for-one correlation between success and hard work, but there's a pretty good correlation between success and failure as well. I think if you looked at 80% of the people who drop out or don't succeed in real estate, how many of them would say, I didn't work hard? I think most of them would say, I worked my butt off. So hard work is clearly not enough. You really have to think of the whole game. And I think you have to model people who have been successful and listen to people who have been successful and learn from their mistakes. And I think that's really what genius is the ability not to have to touch the stove yourself. That if you can watch someone else touch the stove, or even better, listen to someone who knows the stove is hot and not touch it. That's really different. Most people still have to touch the stove to be convinced that it's hot. So I think genius is really learning from other people. And that's what's great about what you're doing with books and podcasts and conferences, is sharing what other people have learned. So number 2 was playing the whole game. Number 3 is quit looking for the silver bullet. Just stop it. It doesn't exist, and the belief that it exists is misleading you from what really works. The silver bullet isn't there. There's lots of skills that seem and appear to be silver bullets, and there's a fad that comes out in sales every year or 5 years. We saw it all the time. Questioning skills, solution skills. Now there's this challenger skill, and it's great skill, but it's not enough, because what you very quickly hear about is those people who pitch those things then come up with a second book that talks about what was missing in the first book. But anybody who's been in sales goes, that's powerful, but it's not enough. Yeah. So those were my 3. How do they compare to what you've heard from other people?
No, I think it's good. I mean, and one of the reasons that I wanted to bring you here is that, you're outside the real estate industry in the sense that you're not a realtor, but everybody, they bought a house, they watch all the TV shows like you watch and everything. And it's great to get a different perspective. So, the whole thing about the silver bullet, I mean, it's so true, because what happens in our industry is that everybody looks for the silver bullet for lead generation. So they'll go pay all these fees,
right.
$30, $40 a month. They'll buy 10 different programs, and before you know it, they're spending $400 or $500 a month on lead generation, and then the leads that come to them are really not quality.
Yeah, and let's face it, where do you get your best leads in a service business? From the people who bought your service. That's what the end result is. It's not your commission. Your commission is a fraction of what you can get by your clients recommending you. Because I've bought a house, I bought 2. The first condo I bought, the realtor was so bad. I bought the place despite the person, not because of the person. And I'd almost recommend, I did, anybody who asked, I'd recommend, just whatever you do, don't call this person, because they will waste your time. And the selling agent was really good, and I used him to sell the place. And the second time, when you really get a good realtor, where they say, okay, well, how much are you making? How much can you put down? Where do you want to live? What's important to you? And it's like, what was important to me was location, of course, but resale. What they can do is they can pull, well, what will affect resale is what's being built around you. So now I'm in a place where they built a 500-unit apartment building across the street from me with a grocery store. So someone just invested $150 million to increase the value of my place, and I didn't have to spend a penny. So that skill is really good. Being able to, in that type of person, you recommend. And, I think of like headhunters, recruiters, they make all their business off of referrals, because what's the alternative? Cold email and cold phone calls. And they do that, and they get hung up on, and their email gets deleted. Your best market is people that you've overserved, where they say, The experience was fantastic. The guy saved us a ton of money, got us what we wanted, and told us the truth. And I mean, I remember you and I talking about the title for your book, and you said, well, what it matters from a realtor? And I go, honesty, sincerity. And I bet other people said that to you, and that's why you picked the title, because that's what resonates with people. That as a salesperson, you think, oh, I just want the commission. But we've all done bad deals in our lives where we focused on getting the commission, but something went wrong. We overestimated or weren't upfront about all the things that go on with the product or all the things that you need. You undersold or oversold, or you didn't have full disclosure with it. And all of a sudden the customer's unhappy for some reason. And guess who they blame? They don't blame themselves. They blame the person who was connected to it, the messenger, the person who brought them to that house. So when you're honest and sincere and helpful and focused on the outcome that they want, because when you buy a piece of real estate, what's the outcome that your client wants? They want the best house they can afford and a nice community and no surprises. They don't want to find out that they're living on an Indian burial ground or the house is haunted. The Manson family used to own it or anything like that. All those things they want to know before they get into it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. No, this is good. I mean, this is all great advice, and I think it's very helpful for, the people here, hearing your story and hearing how you approach it, because there is a professionalism that you bring to whatever you do, and we as realtors need to do the exact same thing.
Yeah, because it is a profession. And I think that what does it a disservice is that the barrier to entry to be a realtor is so low that a lot of people get into it and they watch the TV shows, and the TV shows really don't show you skills, right? They show ego. If you ask yourself after watching those shows, what do those realtors, now they all have books out, what makes them so good? They think it's their dynamic personality. But would you really want to spend 4 hours in a car with any of them? You watch the show and you laugh at them. You're like, oh, God. And yeah, some of it's just entertainment and shock value and drama. But are they really looking out for the best interest of their client? Some of the houses, they sell themselves or they're high end, but what value are they really bringing?
Yeah, I mean, we don't sell houses. I mean, basically, we're helping people through the process.
Through the process. Yeah, because, I mean, they know what they want. They don't want any surprises. That's what realtors are really doing. They don't want to waste their time. I think every buyer thinks they can afford more than they really can. And they don't have a vision. And I think this is the most consistent thing I've seen is if the house isn't perfect condition, they can't understand that, oh, you can change the paint. The paint's $5,000 or, oh, I want a deck or a patio. Well, the patio's $10,000 and you won't buy it because there's no patio, or you want a pool or you don't want a pool. Well, that's, $20,000 to fill it in or $20,000 to build it out. People don't have that vision, but as a realtor, you can either build that vision or show them that vision of what the real cost is to get it to be what you want it to be. And as opposed to you just being the person who drives around and shows them the place.
Yeah, we don't want to be that person. So.
No. And you want to be able to have your ecosystem to connect them up with good inspectors, good mortgage brokers, good title agents that'll get everything done and will get it done properly and officially and in timely at a reasonable cost, because they don't know who those people are.
Yeah, that's true.
And it really screws up deals when they get the wrong people involved, or they can't get a mortgage, or they can't get it done on time, or they don't understand how long it takes to move money from place to place. So those are all tremendous values that realtors can bring, but it's hard to know that and you don't want to learn it from making the mistake. You want to learn it from other people having made that mistake.
Well, that's good. That's great, Brian. So I do have a bonus question. I didn't give you the.
Oh, no.
Yeah. There's no math involved, so don't worry.
No, man. There's 3 realtors in a car.
Yeah, exactly. So no, we're doing the summit here. It's the middle of January. So I just want you to look back last year, 2015, and just share with us an accomplishment, a goal, something that you achieved that you're really proud of. Could be personal, could be business, because I think it's important for us to look back and be proud of our accomplishments.
Yeah, I think 2015 was a huge year for my podcast. And I think it really, I applied my own, teachings to it. It's like, how do you get people to listen to your podcast? You got to make it visible. You got to add value. So I basically would gift my book as a thank you for people who would post a review. I offered up my time, a half-hour slot for pretty much anybody who wanted to just talk on the phone about career advice, deal advice, feedback, about, career advice is the biggest thing. Am I in the right career? You get a lot of people who live in very remote areas that can't make the kind of money that they want to. And it's the old Sam Kinison joke. It's like, you got to move to where the food is. Quit sending food, send U-Hauls, right? You send U-Hauls to get people to move where the food is. It's kind of insensitive, but it's the truth. So I kind of, that kind of culminated in the podcast really growing really fast in 2015.
Well, that's great. Congratulations.
Yeah, and you've been on it, and we should have you back on it.
Yeah, no, I'd be happy to, and I like what you're doing, and you can't handle the truth.
And that's the premise of it. Is like you really got to shake people up of what really works, and
yeah, and it's good, and I'll put the link here on your speaker page, so everybody could see your podcast, and they can go out and listen to it, and I think it's good because you bring a different perspective. You bring a real perspective because you did it. And like I mentioned to all of you before, I work with Brian, and Brian is probably one of the most professional salespeople that I've ever come into contact with. I mean, we did, a few $1 million deals, in corporate sales, which is really hard to do.
Yeah, and a lot of it was unnatural, and there was a lot of things that were going on at the company that we had to really be adamant that was good for the company and good for our customers to make it happen. And I think
but you were the one spearheading it, and we all worked together.
I was the pioneer. The arrows in my back, yeah.
And here we are today, in the world of social media. So things change, and I think that's something that all of you watching should take note of. Things are changing. We can build relationships online now pretty easily.
Yeah, fast and easy, and it's a big part of your strategy and my strategy. It's just the new way of doing it.
Absolutely. Okay, well, thanks a lot for being here today.
Thanks, Mario. It's great to see you again.